The hardest part of loving your enemies is extending grace to them. You know that they have hurt you, and you feel hatred and revenge building up inside you. It's a challenge to transcend that negative mindset to positive thoughts and action. Extending grace to your enemies can be frustrating at times, but to me it's one of the most important parts of what it means to be a Christian.
The hardest thing about loving my enemies is remembering God loves them as much as He loves me. We are all one.
The hardest thing about loving your enemy is that it goes completely against nature, back from when people had to be the survival of the fittest. I think this is probably Jesus' hardest commandments or hardest request of us. It's the one I feel the most on of all of His commandments. It doesn't make sense for someone who hurts you or someone who takes from you or someone who removes something that would be there for your family to love that person. But it is the very thing that Jesus did and commands for us to do.
My personal mantra has long been, believe the best in people. Therefore, for me, the hardest thing about loving my enemies is simply defining who my enemies are. Maybe that's because, as a white, heterosexual, economically stable, educated male, I have no enemies. Maybe I am the enemy. Or maybe the enemy is any persons or powers that seek to tear down the radical work of Jesus, who called for the collective social salvation of all God's children.
It is not natural for me to turn the other cheek. Revenge is my motivator. To love my enemy, I would have to comprehend and understand the actions of my enemy. Why do I want to love or understand someone whose intent is not holy or is even against my very well-being? By my very nature, I want to repel actions by an adversary. I think loving our enemy is the hardest thing Jesus asks us to do. It means separating this person, a fellow human being, a child of God, from their action. Love thy neighbor as thyself.
I'm a judger of my enemies. That's the hardest part of loving them. Importantly, I'm a closet judger. I was taught the old adage, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. In my case, that doesn't lead to respecting them through my silence. Instead of engaging my enemy to understand their viewpoint or how and where they came to believe the way they do, I oftentimes belittle their beliefs because they are seemingly incompatible with mine. I lump my enemies all together instead of seeing them for the individuals they are. We should love our enemies without judging them. Is that possible? I hope so.
I think the hardest thing about loving your enemies is being honest with yourself and realizing the truth. And the truth is, if you don't love them, then you don't love yourself, because you'll eventually lose who you really are by being trapped by anger. You have to love them to receive love from other people. You have to love them to receive love for yourself. You have to love in order to see it, feel it, understand it.